I remember standing there that afternoon, the sound of the ocean crashing softly in the background, carrying with it the same rhythm that had comforted me since childhood. My hands trembled as I tried to steady my voice. I had practiced the words over and over in my head, but the moment they came out, they sounded foreign, harsh even to my own ears. "Mom," I said, barely above a whisper, "I sold your beach house." For a split second, the world seemed to stop. The sea breeze that always felt warm suddenly turned cold. She looked at me, those eyes that once held nothing but kindness, now clouded with confusion, disbelief, and something far heavier: heartbreak. She didn't say a word at first. Her lips parted slightly, as if searching for a question that made sense. Her gaze shifted past me, toward the horizon, the same one we used to watch together when I was little. I could almost see the memories replaying in her mind: summers filled with laughter, sandcastles that never survived the tide, the smell of sunscreen, and Dad grilling corn by the deck. That house was more than bricks and paint. It was the living heartbeat of our family, and in a single sentence, I had torn that heart out. I tried to explain, but every word I said only made things worse. "It wasn't easy, Mom," I told her. "I didn't do it for me." She looked at me like I had spoken another language. How could I expect her to understand? To her, it was betrayal: the walls that had heard our laughter, the porch that had held our quiet talks at sunset, all gone. She had lost her memories, her refuge, without warning. I could see her shoulders tighten as she turned away, walking slowly toward the edge of the water, as though trying to steady herself against the ache rising inside. The thing is, I hadn't meant to hurt her. That house had always been her sanctuary, the last piece of my father she still held close. After he passed, she spent her days there tending to his garden, reading his old books, watching the tide come and go like time itself. Selling it wasn't about greed, it was about necessity. But how do you tell a mother that the memories she clings to are costing her more than she can bear? How do you say that love sometimes means letting go of the past, even when it tears you apart? I remember the moment she finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but heavy with pain. "You had no right," she said. "I didn't argue. She was right. No justification, no reason could soften the blow. I had crossed a sacred line between what was hers and what I thought was best." That silence that followed, it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we couldn't say. Every wave that hit the shore sounded like an echo of all the words I should have spoken earlier, before it was too late. As I stood there, I saw her eyes fill with tears, not of anger, but of loss, the kind that doesn't scream, it just sinks deep. And for the first time, I realized that the hardest part of love isn't sacrifice. It's the moment when your choices break someone you were trying to protect. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to tell her that one day she'd understand why I did it. But in that moment, I didn't deserve her forgiveness. All I could do was stand there and let the silence do the talking. The truth is, sometimes we hurt the people we love most, not out of selfishness, but out of fear. Fear of seeing them struggle, fear of losing what's left of them. I had convinced myself that selling the house was an act of love, a way to free her from the burden of upkeep, of loneliness. But what I didn't realize was that the house wasn't a burden. It was her anchor. It kept her connected to everything she had lost, everything she still cherished. And in trying to save her, I had unknowingly taken away the one thing that still gave her strength. She didn't shout, she didn't curse me. She just walked back to the porch and sat down, looking out at the sea as if searching for answers in the endless blue. The sun began to dip below. The horizon and the light that used to make her face glow now faded into shadow. That was the moment I knew. I had broken something that couldn't be repaired with money or explanations. The silence between us wasn't just awkward, it was final. Sometimes a single choice, a single sentence, can unravel years of love and trust. That day I learned that truth in the most painful way. And though I didn't know it then, what she discovered after that moment would break her heart even more. When I was little, the beach house wasn't just a place we went to for summer vacations. It was where life felt still, simple, and full of love. Every corner of that house carried a story. The porch where Mom and Dad used to sit every evening, their laughter blending with the sound of waves. The kitchen that always smelled like salt, sugar, and something baking. The little seashell wind chime by the door that sang whenever the breeze came through, it wasn't decoration, it was memory. That house had a heartbeat and it beat in rhythm with ours. To anyone else, it was just an old wooden house by the sea, weathered by time and storms. But to us, it was sacred ground. It was where I learned to swim, where I built my first sandcastle, and where Mom and Dad danced barefoot in the living room when they thought no one was watching. That house had seen every version of our family, our laughter, our fights, our silence, our healing. Even after Dad passed, it felt like he never really left. You could still feel him there, in the way the light came through the curtains in the morning, or how the rocking chair creaked just enough to make you think he was still keeping watch. When I sold it, I told myself it was just property, just walls, floors, and furniture. That's how I justified it to myself. But the truth? It wasn't just a house. It was the last living piece of our story. It was everything that made us who we were. And I didn't realize that until I saw the look on Mom's face that day when she realized what I'd done. That house wasn't just a home to her. It was the place where she kept Dad alive in her heart. Every morning she'd walk barefoot across the sand to the water's edge, whisper something only she could hear, and come back smiling. That ritual, that quiet conversation with the sea, was her way of staying connected to the man she lost. I never thought about that when I signed the papers. I only saw the numbers, the burden, the responsibility. I thought I was helping her, removing the weight of maintenance, of loneliness, of old memories that maybe I thought hurt too much. But I didn't see that those memories were the only thing that kept her standing, that every chipped tile, every creaking step, every faded photograph on the wall carried something priceless. When you lose someone, you cling to what's left, and that house was what was left. I remember the first night we ever spent there after Dad died. The house felt different. The air was heavy, the silence sharp. Mom sat on the deck for hours, staring at the dark water, saying nothing. And then she said he loved it here. He always said this place felt like forever. She wasn't talking to me, not really. She was talking to him. And for the first time, I understood that the beach house wasn't just a place to visit. It was a bridge between the past and the present. It was where she could still feel him beside her. Years later, when the bills started piling up and I saw her struggling to keep everything going, I thought I was doing the right thing. I told myself that Dad wouldn't want her tied to an old house, that he'd want her free. But I never asked her what she wanted. I assumed. An assumption is a cruel thing. It makes you believe you're being kind when you're actually breaking something precious. The beach house carried generations of love, laughter, and lessons. It was where I learned patience, watching Dad fix that old boat that never really worked. It was where Mom taught me that peace isn't found in perfection, but in presence. And when I signed it away, I wasn't just giving up property. I was giving away history. After I told her, I went back there one last time before the new owners moved in. I walked through every room slowly. The echo of my footsteps felt too loud. I ran my fingers over the walls, over the spots where our family photos used to hang, and I swear I could still hear the faint sound of Dad's laughter, smell Mom's perfume lingering in the air. The tide was low that day, and the sea seemed quieter, almost like it was morning, too. That's when I realized the truth. Some places don't belong to us because we own them. They belong to us because they hold the parts of our hearts we can't ever replace. And once they're gone, we're never quite the same again. I thought I was freeing her from a house. I didn't know I was taking away her home. The hardest part to explain is why I did something that looked so cruel, so heartless to someone who had given me everything. The truth is, it wasn't out of anger or greed. It came from a place I thought was love, a place that believed I was doing what needed to be done. I had watched her year after year, trying to keep that beach house standing, fixing leaks, patching cracks, paying bills that only seemed to grow heavier with time. I saw her grow smaller under the weight of it all, and I told myself I couldn't let her keep carrying that burden. I thought selling it was the only way to protect her. I had convinced myself I was being practical. The world around us was changing, prices were rising, and the house needed repairs we couldn't afford. Every time I visited, I'd see something else broken, another corner sagging, another part of her fading with it. She'd wave it off, smile, and say, "It's fine, I'll take care of it." But I knew she couldn't, not anymore. She wasn't the same woman who could climb up ladders, paint the shutters, or fix a leaky faucet at midnight. She was tired, and I mistook her. Silence for acceptance. I thought she stayed in that house out of habit, not love. When the offers started coming in, I ignored the knot in my chest. Each number looked like a solution, a way to clear debts, pay her medical bills, and give her comfort without the constant worry. I told myself that if she didn't have to think about maintenance or money, she could finally rest. I pictured her in a smaller place, easier to manage, closer to me. Maybe she'd even smile more, laugh again, live lighter. It all made sense in my head. But good intentions can be dangerous when they're built on assumptions. I never asked her how she felt. I never gave her the choice. I thought I was saving her, but the truth is I was saving myself. From worry, from guilt, from the helplessness of watching her grow old and fragile. Selling the house wasn't just a financial decision, it was an emotional escape. I couldn't bear the idea of something happening to her there, of her falling alone, of something breaking and her being too weak to fix it. I thought I was being the responsible one, stepping up where she wouldn't. But love doesn't always mean taking control. Sometimes it means letting someone hold on to what makes them whole, even when you don't understand it. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, staring at the stack of papers. My hands were cold. My signature looked foreign at the bottom of each page. I told myself I'd explain it later, that she'd understand once she saw the money, once she realized it was all for her. I even rehearsed the words, "Mom, I did this for you." But when I finally said them out loud, they sounded wrong, hollow, because the truth was I hadn't done it for her. Not entirely. I did it to feel like I was fixing something, when really I was breaking everything that mattered. I didn't understand what that house meant until it was too late. To her, it wasn't a burden. It was purpose. It gave her days rhythm, her heart reason, the repairs, the little routines, the endless care. It wasn't work, it was love in motion. It was how she stayed close to him, how she stayed strong. I took that away thinking I was freeing her, but I only left her with emptiness. After I told her, I tried to explain it all, to make her see the reasoning. But how do you explain logic to a heart that's grieving? She just listened quietly, her eyes fixed somewhere far beyond me. I kept talking, hoping that if I filled the silence with enough words, she might find forgiveness in one of them. She didn't. She just said, "You think love is fixing what's broken, but sometimes love is just holding on." That sentence hit me harder than any anger ever could. I realized then that I hadn't saved her from anything. I'd taken from her the one thing that still gave her peace. I acted out of love, yes, but a love mixed with fear, guilt, and pride. A love that tried to control what it didn't fully understand. Good intentions can still break hearts. I had told myself I was protecting her, but in truth, I was protecting my own fear of loss. I didn't want to see her fade, so I took away the place that made her feel alive. And that's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. I didn't expect her to find out the way she did. I thought I'd be the one to tell her everything, that I'd have the time, the right words, the courage to explain why I'd done it. But life doesn't always wait for the right moment. It happened on a quiet morning, the kind she loved most. She had gone to the beach house one last time, wanting to spend the day there before the new owners moved in. She didn't know it was already gone, that the sale had been finalized, that strangers had already begun to change what once was ours. When she arrived, the lock had been changed. The key she'd carried for decades, the same one she kept on a small seashell keychain, didn't fit anymore. I can still see her standing there, confused, jiggling the handle, thinking maybe she was just turning it wrong. The sound of her voice calling my name still echoes in my head. There was no anger in it yet, just confusion, a soft plea for understanding. But when the realization came, when it finally hit her that she no longer belonged to the place she had loved her whole life, something in her broke quietly, like glass cracking under pressure. When I got there, she was sitting on the steps outside, the ocean behind her, her hands resting on her lap, still holding that useless key. She didn't cry, not then. She just looked at me with eyes that asked 1,000 questions I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to tell her everything, that the money from the sale had gone to cover her medical bills, that I'd paid off the debt she didn't even know I knew about, that I had tried to save her from the weight of things she couldn't carry anymore. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out, because none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was that I had made a decision that wasn't mine to make. She finally spoke softly, almost to herself. "You did all this behind my back?" There was no anger in her tone, only disbelief, and that hurt more than if she had shouted. I nodded, trying to explain, trying to make her see the good that had come from it. I told her how I used the money to pay for the treatment she had refused because she didn't want to be a burden. I told her I'd made sure she wouldn't have to worry about bills or maintenance or repairs ever again. I said all of it like it was supposed to make sense, like it would somehow erase the betrayal she felt. But love doesn't work like math. You can't balance it out with good intentions and practical outcomes. She listened quietly, her gaze never leaving the horizon. When I finished, she said something that I'll never forget. "You thought you were helping me," she said, "but you took away the only thing I had left that made me feel alive." Her voice trembled just slightly, and then she looked down at the sand beneath her feet. I wasn't holding on to that house because of the walls or the roof. I was holding on because it was the last place where I still felt him, where I still felt like in me. And that was the moment I finally understood. It wasn't about the money, the work, or the practicality. It was about connection. That house was her last thread to a life that once was full, whole, and loved. I had seen it as a burden, but to her it was comfort. The memories that I thought were too heavy for her were the ones that kept her strong. She didn't need me to rescue her. She needed me to see her, to understand that sometimes letting someone keep their pain is a kind of love too. As we sat there, the waves rolled in quietly, washing up near our feet. She didn't look at me again for a long time. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of salt and seaweed, and I could feel the weight of what I'd done pressing down like the tide pulling me under. I reached for her hand, but she didn't take it. She just whispered, "You should have trusted me to decide what I could bear." That broke me, because she was right. I had made every choice believing I knew what was best for her, never realizing that what she needed most was the freedom to make her own. In the days that followed, she grew quieter. The house was gone, but her silence built new walls between us. I wanted to believe time would heal it, that one day she'd forgive me. But forgiveness doesn't always come when you expect it. Sometimes it arrives too late or not at all. That day on the steps, watching her stare out at the sea, I finally understood that love without trust can turn even the kindest act into heartbreak. After that day, the silence between us became its own kind of language. We spoke less, but somehow everything we needed to say still hung in the air between us, too heavy, too fragile to touch. I could feel the distance growing, like an invisible wall built from all the words I hadn't said and all the ones I had said too. Late. She didn't yell, she didn't fight, she simply withdrew. That was worse. Anger I could have handled, but quiet carries its own weight. I tried to make it right. I brought her flowers, offered to take her out to dinner, suggested little trips, but nothing filled the space the beach house had once occupied. It wasn't just a place we lost, it was the bridge between us. I could see it in her eyes when she looked at me. There was still love there, but it was buried under layers of sadness and something like resignation. She wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to live with the loss, and I had to watch her do it knowing I was the reason for it. Then one evening she called me over. Her voice was softer than usual, almost uncertain. When I arrived, she was sitting by the window, the last light of day falling across her face. She looked older somehow, more fragile, like time had stolen another piece of her since I last saw her. She motioned for me to sit. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then she began talking, not about the house, but about life, about love, about Dad. She told me how, when he was sick, she had prayed every night, not for him to live forever, but for the strength to let him go when the time came. Love, she said, isn't about holding tighter. It's about knowing when to let go and when to forgive. I wanted to tell her I understood, but I didn't. Not yet. I was still clinging to my own guilt like it was something I needed to carry, a punishment I deserved. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You did what you thought was right, and maybe it wasn't what I needed, but I know you meant it out of love. That's enough." Her voice trembled on that last word. That's when the tears came, not for the house, but for everything we'd lost inside ourselves trying to do what we thought was best for each other. It's strange, forgiveness. You imagine it will feel like relief, like something being lifted off your shoulders, but it doesn't, not right away. It feels like breaking all over again, because to truly forgive, you have to face the pain first. You have to look it in the eye and accept it. That night I did. I saw her pain, and for the first time I didn't try to fix it. I just sat with it, with her in silence. Sometimes love is like that. It's not in the words or the solutions, it's in the quiet moments where you simply stay. In the weeks that followed, something shifted between us. The tension didn't disappear, but it softened. We began to talk again, slowly, carefully, like learning to walk after an injury. She started telling me small things again, things that didn't matter much but somehow meant everything. She even laughed one morning when I burned the toast. It wasn't the same laugh I remembered from before, but it was real. It carried a little bit of healing in it. I realized then that love and regret often live side by side. You can love someone deeply and still hurt them. You can be forgiven and still carry the weight of what you've done, and maybe that's what makes love so human. It's messy, imperfect, and endlessly forgiving. Before the house was gone, I used to think of it as the place that held our love together. But I was wrong. Love doesn't live in walls or memories. It lives in the moments when you choose to stay, even after everything breaks. It lives in the way she still looked at me with tenderness, even after all the pain I caused. It lives in forgiveness that doesn't erase the past, but chooses to move forward anyway. One afternoon, we drove back to the beach. The new house stood where ours once did, modern, shiny, unfamiliar. We didn't go inside, we just stood by the water, watching the waves crash and retreat. She reached for my hand, and this time, she held it. No words, no explanations, just quiet understanding. The tide came in, and the water touched our feet, cold but alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not because things were fixed, but because they were finally accepted. Love had found its way back, not through what we built or lost, but through what we were willing to forgive. Time has a way of softening things. The sharp edges of guilt, the weight of regret, even the ache of loss, they don't disappear, but they start to blend into something quieter, something that hurts less with every passing day. It took me a long time to understand what that moment, selling the beach house, breaking her heart, facing my own, was meant to teach me. I used to think life was about holding on to what you love, about keeping things safe, preserving them so they never fade. But now I know that sometimes the real lesson is learning to let go and realizing that the things we lose aren't what define us. It's what we carry forward that does. After everything, I started to look at life differently. I began to see that the house wasn't the story. It was just the setting. The story was us. The laughter that echoed through those rooms, the arguments, the small acts of care we didn't always recognize at the time, all of that was still alive, even without the walls that once held it. I used to think that by losing the house, we had lost everything. But love doesn't live in wood and stone. It lives in the people who built it, in the moments they shared, in the lessons they left behind. She used to tell me that the ocean had a way of teaching you patience. You can fight the waves, or you can learn to move with them. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I do now. Life is a lot like that ocean, always moving, always changing, always carrying pieces of what came before into what comes next. We try so hard to anchor ourselves to something permanent, but permanence is an illusion. What lasts isn't the place, it's the love that survives the storms. There was one morning, months after it all happened, when I went back to the beach alone. The new house stood there, bright and perfect, almost unrecognizable. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore, just a quiet acceptance. I walked down to the shoreline, let the water wash over my feet, and closed my eyes. The air smelled the same, that mix of salt and memory. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I'd lost something. I felt like I'd come home to what really mattered. I could hear her voice in my mind, calm and steady, reminding me that life isn't measured by what we own, but by what we give. That every sacrifice, every mistake, every heartbreak carries a purpose if we're willing to learn from it. The beach house was gone, but the lessons it taught me would stay forever. The importance of empathy, of listening before acting, of loving without control, and maybe that's the real legacy she left me. We often chase success, possessions, security, things we think will make us feel whole. But wholeness doesn't come from having more, it comes from understanding enough. I thought selling the house was a way to secure a future. What I didn't realize was that love, trust, and forgiveness are the only things that make a future worth living. I used to see that moment as the biggest mistake of my life. Now I see it as the turning point, the moment that taught me what truly matters. Every time I stand by the sea now, I imagine the waves carrying our story, every joy, every tear, every word left unsaid, rolling out into the distance, then coming back again, softer, gentler. It reminds me that nothing is ever really lost, it just changes form. The love that lived in that house now lives in the way I see the world, in the way I speak, in the way I try to love others with patience and truth. In the end, she forgave me, not with a grand gesture, not with a speech, but with a look, a small smile that said, "We're okay." That's all it took. And I realized then that love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. If I've learned anything, it's this. Homes can be rebuilt. Money can be earned again, but trust and love, they're the true foundations of life. And when we lose sight of that, we lose everything that gives our lives meaning. True wealth isn't measured in what we keep. It's measured in what we're willing to give and in the love that endures long after everything else fades.